back in 2012. It was probably through the Great Big Group, but when I learned about his story, I was fascinated about his origin and how he got to America and what he invented. He's really fascinating, and don't let his puns and long-windedness distract you from the fact that the man is brilliant. So, ladies and gentlemen, my friend, Dr. Eddie Lin.
Well, thank you, Joe. So let me just back up one slide. We're going to talk about a new invention of mine called the SentriO Oxy. And from 2005 until 2020, I was working on an advanced wound care system that would provide therapies that were, and in ways not previously available. And we were, about 18 months from commercialization. We have already met twice with the FDA. And then COVID hit, and all my supply chains were disrupted. And at that time, we were just learning about COVID, and people were dropping dead like flies, and there weren't enough ventilators. At least people thought the way to save these people is to put them on ventilators. So our government spent $3 billion on making as many ventilators as they could. But I knew that that was absolutely the wrong way, because as an anesthesiologist, I know that ventilators are very difficult to use. It really needs a lot of skill, and there were a lot of complications. And yet at that time, people were trying to hook 2 patients to 1 ventilator. You remember the Y connector? When you would be doing remarkably well if you could even keep that 1 patient alive and improve, let alone trying to keep 2 at the same time. So I knew there had to be a better way. And so I came up with an invention that through a combination of special valves that work in concert, it would selectively deliver oxygen to deep into the alveolar space where the oxygen exchange actually takes place. And our test results show that this is something that would be tremendously helpful. We applied for EUA before the FDA, and they said, yeah, but nobody's asking for masks. I mean, they got people asking for ventilators and all kinds of other things, but nobody's asking for masks. You don't qualify. And so this dragged on for a long time. Finally, they said, hey, you know what? This is really just a class 1 device. Why don't you just go ahead and market it? So after extensive delay, we finally got this product now on the market. So let me give a little bit of background about COVID. Everybody wants COVID to be over. We're sick and tired of COVID, but COVID isn't sick of us. I mean, the SARS-CoV-2 virus. And there are many important reasons why we may never get rid of COVID. Among the reasons is that it is very mutable. It can mutate faster and faster. And when COVID first came about, its R0, its rating of transmissibility was 3.3. It was relatively on the low spectrum, but it was very devastating because it apparently poisons our mitochondria, which is our cellular battery. And patients were actually walking around with oxygen saturation of 70, if not lower, which was never seen before. In the hospitals, if the patient's oxygen saturation dropped to 85%, we pull out the crash cart, we get ready to do CPR. And yet we see patients with oxygen saturation, like I said, 70s, 80s, but they have virtually no reserve. And patients have known to collapse as they try to get on a cart. They would be fine in the morning, and the family comes home in the afternoon and they're dead. It's because they were truly living right on the edge. And as a result of this extreme cellular hypoxia, all kinds of pathologic processes take place. Microclots, cardiac, liver, kidney damage. So that's why it is such a devastating disease. Unfortunately, the R factor, the transmissibility factor with each mutation. Now, of course, some mutations make the virus even weaker and useless. I mean, it doesn't infect us, and we don't care about those. It's the ones that mutate and become even worse. So today, the BA.5, the latest variant, has an R0 of 18.6, which exceeds that of measles, which is at the high end of the spectrum. And because we've run out of money for COVID testing, and recently, as we all know, the government sent out at least 5 million home testing kits, which are not reported. So the reported incidence is just not a reliable indicator of what the situation is. A few days ago, officially, we have 100,000 new cases a day, but experts believe it's at least 7 times higher. And this BA.5 not only are harder to test, in other words, you can get false negatives, but it also evade the prior immunity, regardless whether you've had full vaccination or prior COVID infections. It can infect you again. And with each recurrent infection, your risk of long-haul COVID goes up. So why are we not going to get rid of COVID anytime soon? Maybe never. Is that we have 20% positivity of this virus in the white-tailed deer and in livestock. So this cycle, they can infect the cattle and the deer, mutate, becomes worse, and come back and haunt us. And a lot of people forget HIV came about in 1980. And 40 years later, we still don't have a vaccine because it mutates so fast. So unfortunately, we can't be too optimistic. And it's really important to be cautious. And because our vaccines are developed in response to new variants, there's always a lag. So your best protection is to religiously wear a good mask whenever you come into contact with people outside. So what's the cost of COVID to society? What Harvard economists in October 2020 published an article in JAMA that said that our national tab for COVID is 16.5 trillion. Let that sink in for a moment. 16.5 trillion. I don't even know what that means. I can't put my hands around that. And the cost for rehabilitation for lost health was projected to be 8.5 trillion. Now, 8.5 trillion is more than 7 times our generational investment in infrastructure. And that estimate was calculated before COVID got really bad, before we knew about long-haul COVID and recurrent surges and so on. So suffice it to say, the cost will be unbearable. And so it's really important to prevent that severe hypoxia from happening, because that is what will likely reduce our rehabilitation costs. And on top of that, according to US Bureau of Labor Statistics, we have had over 500,000 healthcare worker resignations per month for the last 13 straight months. Some months were like 569,000, so closer to 600,000. That's 6.5 million healthcare workers lost just since November 2021. And we only graduate, excuse me, we only graduate 155,000 nurses a year. How is this going to last? 1 in 5 doctors are going to quit because they've been burned out. For us who are not at the front lines, we see and hear the terrible news, and then we can turn away and we can get back, to some semblance of a normal life. But this is not so for our healthcare workers, and we really face imminent collapse. So how can SentriO Oxy help? This device,
What just happened? Hold on a second. There's a major echo going on. So I just muted Eddie, and it has gone away. So Ed, is it possible that Dave called in or something? I don't know.
There's 2 Larry Stevens, and they're echoing. I guess cell phones by a computer, maybe.
I only see one Larry, but
The other one dropped off.
okay, good.
The one Larry's not on mute.
In general, I say you can never have too many Larrys. In this specific case, however, it seems you really can. Ed, I think you're good.
Okay.
Let's continue.
So SentriO helps in 3 major ways. It improves clinical outcome by its exceptional oxygenation capabilities. It saves an enormous amount of oxygen, and it simplifies care. It doesn't require any high skills or expensive equipment. And for some reason, my slide advanced. Okay, to understand the
Ed,
yeah.
before you do that, I'm visual. I'm having a hard time even understanding what it is. Do you have a
Okay.
picture of it?
Here it is. So this is a SentriO Oxy. It has a adjustable anesthesia mask, and the heart of the device is the controller manifold, which is a series of valves inside that work in concert. So the patient will wear it over their face, and the oxygen source can be a oxygen concentrator, which is often used at home. It can come from a tank oxygen, like in an ambulance setting, and in many third world nations, or it can be from a wall oxygen outlet in a nursing home or hospital.
Please don't leave this slide just yet, because
Okay.
I have some questions and I suspect others do. Is this to be used inpatient only? You said ambulance,
patients.
but you also use the word home. So I don't imagine.
Okay, so it can be used on any patient, whether at home, in the ambulance on the way to the hospital, or in the hospital.
But practically speaking, as a marketer, if it's for everybody, it's for no one. So help me understand the use case. Because the device you've labeled number 2 looks big, bulky, and expensive.
It's the size of a cooler.
Like a cooler where I put beer in it?
Yeah.
Okay, it looks, I would have thought it would be bigger, but still, are you suggesting that this is going to be durable medical equipment sold alongside wheelchairs?
Well, the oxygen concentrator is a durable medical equipment, but my device is a single-use disposable product.
Okay, and what's the cost? You're saying number 2 is disposable?
Oh no, number 2 is a piece of durable medical equipment. It's the warranty on them is, I believe, two years. So they would last longer than that.
I'm still trying to imagine who specifically is buying this. Where does it stay for 2 years? Because no patient will have this in their home for 2 years, right?
Well, they can lease them, just like, if you broke your leg, Medicare will lease crutches for you. But if for some
this is
reason
not yet on the market, so I'm thinking you're way ahead of yourself if we are penetrating the home consumer market.
Well, Joe, think about people with chronic respiratory problems. Like, Eddie, is this like something for would help with COPD?
Yes, exactly. Many people with COPD, asthma have these things in their homes.
Okay.
They have the oxygen concentrator in their homes. People with congestive heart failure, valvular diseases, and so on. Anybody with low.
So the fact that you put Hilo on picture number 2 is an attempt for it to be your product, but in fact, the number 2 concept exists in market now, and your device will be able to hook up to any of them.
Correct.
Very unclear to me, perhaps others. So I was like, he's ambitiously looking to create the mask thing and number 2, and maybe his own brand of number 3.
Our product is just this thing on the left side. That's it.
Okay, I might suggest you take your logo off number 2 then.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Joe.
Sure. So this mask would be, you said earlier that our best defense against COVID is wearing a mask.
So you don't get COVID. So you reduce the likelihood of COVID. But
right.
once
so
you
were
get
talking
it,
about what we've come to expect as an N95 or equivalent.
Correct.
Right. And this has nothing to do with that. This is to treat you once you have it.
Right. If you have hypoxia, low oxygen content in your blood of 94% or lower, you should prevent it from getting lower.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. So should I go back?
Consensus says yes.
Okay. All right. So the oxygen dissociation curve describes the relationship between hemoglobin, which is a protein in our red blood cells that bond to oxygen in our lungs, and then releases it when it circulates peripherally. And I had mentioned to you earlier that the curve has a exponential aspect. In fact, it has two exponential aspects. So on the vertical axis is the oxygen saturation, and on the y-axis is the oxygen content in the arterial blood. So you can see if I want to increase it from 60 to 70, the oxygen saturation from 60 to 70, I only need about, on the x-axis, only 5 millimeter increase in oxygen. But over on this side, to go from 90 to 100, I need to increase the oxygen content by 45 millimeters of mercury. Nine times that needed lower down here. So the significance of this is to say that in order to push oxygen saturation in the upper ranges, even by 1 or 2 or whatever, takes much, much more ability to deliver more oxygen. So these are just some examples of patients who were, in this case, on non-rebreathing mask, and you can see their oxygenation is hovering right around 90. The moment they are on SentriO Oxy, it goes up to 99 to 100. Here's a patient who is in the 80s. Again, it was around 85, rose to 94% on SentriO.
Okay,
And
for you to have that data, Ed, are you at clinical? I'm really lost about where you are in this. I've come to know you as the wound care guy. This is a completely different initiative. So in my mind, I'm thinking, how long have you been working on this? And you already have data, and where's this thing manufactured? And where are you in the process here?
Well, we embarked on this in March of 2020.
Okay.
And the fine-tuning the valves and getting it just right was very, very challenging. But we are now, we have just manufactured about 5,000 units of the product, and they are in Miami and Puerto Rico.
And what are they doing there? Because they're not cleared for use.
They're being used.
Are they cleared by FDA for use?
Yeah, because it's class 1.
Oh, okay, I did not realize that. And I have to just pause here. Michelle, any comments?
Eddie and I probably need to talk offline.
Okay, fair enough. Eddie and you need to talk offline. That's not good, Eddie. Okay, please continue.
No, we were told by FDA that we could go ahead and market the product, and we've met with them twice.
Okay, but talk to Michelle right after this call.
Okay. So this is a patient with dissection of the aorta, and this is a surgical emergency. But anyway, the patient on nasal cannula, the saturation at 10 liters was 100%, the 5 liters is 97, 2 liters 93%. And the surgeon decided to put the patient on my device. Now, the manufacturer's instruction is do not use less than 5 liters per minute, but the surgeon went ahead anyway, put the patient on 2 liters. And even on 2 liters, which only fills the bag at the rate of 33 cc's per second, totally inadequate. The patient's oxygenation was 99%. He didn't like it, of course, and it was not being appropriately used. But it goes to show that even at such ridiculously low rate, he was able to maintain the patient on 99% saturation. At other centers, the feedback is that the patient could be extubated early, and even obese patients did not need to be proned. You may have heard of proning of COVID patients. It's because they have such terrible ventilation, perfusion mismatch. The fluids, the edematous fluids pool in certain regions of the lung. So they had to be turned from lying on the back to lying on the front side. Now, oftentimes, I mean, for the lay person, they think, well, it's no big deal to turn the patient from one side to the other. But you got to think about the patient who may have central venous pressure lines. They may even be intubated. Many of them are. And it requires a whole team, anesthesiologists, physicians, nurses, orderlies, to synchronously turn the patient without dislodging vital catheters. So it is a very time-consuming and difficult job. Also, for patients waiting for pulmonary transplant, the whole body is suffering from not having enough oxygen. So their health deteriorates. And when you can improve that, they are able to improve their health and be in a better condition for surgery. Also after surgery, less barrel trauma from ventilation. That means the operation is likely to have a better outcome. So here's a patient who is on 60 liters per minute of high flow nasal cannula, and his oxygen saturation was 92. When we put the patient on SentriO Oxy and incrementally dialed down, well, first of all, as soon as it was put on at 15 liters initially, our device never needs anything higher than 15, but we started 15, his oxygen saturation rose from 99. Now this is pretty impressive because normally if you can improve the oxygenation on the same flow, that's pretty good. But if you can improve the oxygen flow with an 83% reduction in oxygen consumption down to 10, that tells you there's something in this product that delivers the magical results. And that's what we're seeing in many, many patients. So coming back to this slide earlier is that we can save 83% of the daily oxygen consumption compared to high flow nasal cannula, which requires expensive cannula, heating coils, humidifier, all of which are single use, by the way, okay? And so the cost is pretty high, and the respiratory therapist has to come and replace the water at least 3 times a day. 60 liters of oxygen per minute blowing requires a lot of humidification and heating. So if oxygen costs only 1 penny per liter, by saving 72,000 liters per day, it would save $720 a day. But in Puerto Rico, it has been confirmed, the average cost of oxygen is 11 cents per liter. It's as high as 21 in some places. And because the oxygen consumption is part of DRG, hospitals don't get paid more because they're using more oxygen or less oxygen. This is an important and significant way by which they can reduce the cost. And we all know that oxygen exchange takes place in the lungs, but it really is in the periphery of the lungs, in the what we call the alveolar region, where the lung tissue are microscopic grape clusters. And for the air or oxygen we breathe to get there, they first have to travel through the pharyngeal space, the trachea, the bronchi. This area that's shown in gray here is called the anatomical dead space, and they do not participate in oxygen exchange. And for an adult, for a 70-kilogram adult, the anatomical dead space is about 150 milliliters out of a tidal volume of 450. So it's about a third of it. So when the patient breathes fast and shallow, which they tend to, the more difficulty they have breathing, the more short of breath they are, the less alveolar ventilation actually takes place, because the flowing in of air in and out, half of it would be taken up in the dead space, which does absolutely nothing. So when using SentriO Oxy, it is really important to, coach the patient about taking slow, deep breath, and then they would really, see a difference. Now some of these other slides really get deep into the some of the clinical nitty-gritties, and I think it may not be suitable for me to get into that here. But suffice it to just say that an old wife's, what I believe to be an old wife's tale taught in medical school is that for COPDs, you got to be careful not to give them too much oxygen because they will stop breathing. Okay, so, and I remember when I was a medical student, attending university teach, if the patient has pain, give them around 75 milligrams IM every 4 to 6 hours. But they're skinny old ladies and big fat guys. 75 milligrams Demerol isn't the right treatment for everybody. Similarly, just because we have observed in some patients the dangers, that some of them do get into some difficulty with getting too much oxygen, they accumulate carbon dioxide. But we are starving many, literally tens of millions of COPDs by restricting the currency of life. If we all get $1 a day to live on food. We can't afford much more than white bread. But if we could have more allowance, we could eat a more nutritious diet. And so if we could give COPDs the oxygens they need, they will be able to have the energy necessary to blow off this carbon dioxide that they have submissively accepted as the lesser of two evils. Either you have high carbon dioxide and live, or you don't have enough oxygen. Of course.
Yeah, I have many questions, as I'm sure others do, but
Okay.
I'd like to just start with this. This is not a familiar category to me. And so I picked up on some words you used, and I Googled oxygenation mask, and I Googled high flow nasal cannula. And I saw that there are many players. There are many products out there. So for you
I
to
don't
be
know about
successful, if I
many
may
high
just finish,
a few.
the point is, and certainly a VC, should you need VC money, they probably will be perhaps more, but not educated enough about the market. We're talking about getting you into market-wide commercialization and adoption. Who do you see as your competitor? That is, there's going to be switching costs involved. People are going to stop using this and start using yours. Are we going to get people to stop using nasal cannula, oxygenation masks, something else? How many competitors, price points? I just don't understand how to market that.
Okay, well, in terms of nasal cannula and regular ordinary face mask, I don't know how many manufacturers there are. There must be at least dozens and dozens of them, but they are in a different category from me because they are unable to deliver the kind of oxygen saturation that mine can.
I would disagree. I would say that someone uses a mask to deliver oxygen is your direct competitor. You might be really, really good and they can't compete, but they are competing because they're already in market and you are not. So again, who are you convincing to try yours versus what they are doing?
Well, initially we are focused on competing against the high flow nasal cannula. And they are, I know of two brands, Optiflow and Vaportherm, and also Philips BiPAP ventilators. These are the three key ones. There may be a few more, but there are not a lot of players because the equipment is quite expensive. They cost $5,000 to $6,000 each.
Josue suggests Fisher and Paykill's probably a competitor.
What's the name?
Fisher and Paykill. He put in the chat.
Yes.
Josue, would you? How did you know that so quickly? Are you in that space?
Well, we were working with a university and some companies in Mexico try to develop a ventilator during the pandemic. So one of the components that they were looking at was from Fisher and Paykel.
Right, and Fisher Paykel makes one of the two brands that I mentioned earlier. I forgot whether it's Optiflow or Vaportherm. Right.
Could Alyssa, you had a comment? And Rick, you after her, please.
So a couple of questions. I actually sold capital in the cardiac and critical care space, an emergency room. Can the mask be hooked up to a machine, a piece of capital equipment that's already available in the hospital?
Yes.
And what is that machine?
It actually doesn't require a machine. You just hook it right to the oxygen outlet at the head of the bed.
Okay, perfect. So there's no capital required. That's your number one seller.
So pieces number 2 and 3 from your presentation, when I made you go show us the thing, are you suggesting that those are unnecessary given a hospital setting?
One of the 3 things shown is a wall outlet for oxygen. That's what we connected.
I see.
But that's your number one seller. And then the slide where it showed the patient, and in 2 minutes, they required their pulse ox went up. That's your first slide. And I would panel the room to see how many people have experience with loved ones who have gotten. My father was at 85 and he dropped down in the 70s. He survived, but that was 2 years ago and he's still having issues. So people that understand this, so you're talking to an audience that maybe doesn't necessarily have people that have experienced that. So that could be your number one slide and give a comparison of what that feels like. Anybody that's ever hiked a 14er, my pulse ox was 91 2 hours after my 14er. So so people can get a correlation.
Mhm.
Know your audience for sure. And this is a great one for physicians, but I think you definitely have to have one for a separate slide for those that slide deck for those that don't. And then also, can it register the amount of CO2 expelled?
Yes.
Okay, that's a big seller. Because
And
then
how-
does it automatically modulate?
No, it doesn't modulate anything as such. I mean, the patient breathes spontaneously, and you know, if the physician, but by the way, this is, even though it's a class 1 product, it is a prescription product.
Yes.
Okay, so you couldn't go to the store and just buy yourself. But
No.
yes, it supports Untitled CO2 monitoring, very accurate monitoring.
And then so that's a great seller. And then one of the Erica Solano said the market question, she believes that people with pre-existing conditions associated with high morbidity rates due to COVID might be interested in procuring the device just as a precaution. I agree with that. And I think that a lot of physicians would, instead of just giving an oxygen mask for those intense moments where they're unable to breathe, where they can't even get up out of their chair when they're at home, this might be a nice prescription through the DME market.
I haven't explored in any detail the home use aspect. I mean, obviously it can be used for home, but I don't know that the reimbursement is in place for that.
Sure.
Nick Anderson advised me to focus on the hospital market because that's where it's, greatest utilities, obviously.
Absolutely. And what is the price of the consumable, the mask?
The end user price, the suggested end user price is $150.
And what's the cost of the hospital?
About 100, maybe less.
Okay.
And what
That's
is that
very
relative?
reasonable.
What is that relative to what they're paying now with nasal cannula and other things competing?
I don't know.
Well, nasal cannula will be only like $10, but the thing
Right.
is you don't need the capital. Well, and you don't need the capital with nasal equipment, but if you don't need an oxygen tank, if you don't need
Sure.
a
So it's
variety.
just a matter of, I mean, what if,
No, I
imagine-
should clarify something. Please don't confuse the regular nasal cannula that you see people sometimes in the supermarket shopping wearing.
yes,
That's just a few bucks. Okay, maybe $2 or $5, at most $5. But a high flow nasal cannula that hooks onto those two machines that I show you is about $99.
okay, so
And-
you're at price parity.
Perfect.
But the savings is also
And
in
cannot be used without disposable heating coils and humidifier coils and IV bags that have to be changed in addition to the expensive equipment. So yes, we are very competitive. We are actually cheaper.
So you need
Because
to
of the
dig in
other
on that.
things you don't need. You not only replace the unit, but you replace the need for other things.
And you lower risk for the hospital, you lower infection rate risk because you don't have the humidity levels. I mean, there's a variety of pluses for this, and the patient gets better faster. That's your selling point.
Thank you, Elisa, for your input. And for those who are not familiar with high flow nasal cannula, the Anesthesia Patient Safety Foundation recommend this device not be used in any room with special negative ventilation, because you can imagine 60 liters per second, per minute blowing in. It's like a leaf blower, has to come out, right? So the virus that's present in the nasopharyngeal space is blown about the room, and it's supposed to be only used in a negative ventilation room. But even tertiary medical centers may have 1 or 2 negative ventilation rooms per floor. Now, with the advent of COVID, they have tried to convert more rooms. But the point is that as a practical matter, they don't have enough rooms. So they use it even in rooms that are not properly equipped.
That's
And
fascinating.
increase the
Rick?
transmissibility.
Rick, you had a comment? Take yourself off mute.
There we go. I just had myself muted out of habit. But got a mother who has COPD. She's had it for some long time. She does not have a deep nasal cannula, but my question was, would this possibly be a device for if she wanted to go out shopping and be more mobile and have much more efficient oxygen delivery? Is this something that might be recommended for her, especially since it doesn't involve that insertion and all that invasive stuff? She just has the little cannula, you know, the ones you were talking about, you just put them on your nose. And also, since COPD is noted for being a degenerative disease, would this be an alternative during that weird gray period where oxygen is more and more denied the patient? Would this be something that could prolong or eliminate the use of a deep nasal cannula? And so those are really two different questions. One, is the mask something that would help her when she has to go out to get a lot more oxygen? And two, would it be something that would, and I think you've already answered this, prolong the delay for more invasive oxygen delivery?
Well, thanks for that. Thanks for those questions. First of all, a lot of people don't realize that there is 1 second of time during our inspiration called peak inspiratory flow, where we're actually drawing air at 40 to 60 liters per minute, but for just 1 brief second. So the nasal cannula has no accommodation for that. The reservoir of our mask allows for the patient to draw a good amount of pure oxygen. And so it actually helps that COPD. And you may have noticed I mentioned in one of my opening slides that I won an award from the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute to develop the next generation of oxygenation devices. And in fact, we are in the process of prototyping a new nasal cannula that at least doubles the amount of oxygen that's available. And as part of a overall comprehensive solution to help patients who are so short of breath that, you know, living on the edge, so to speak. And yet when they go out, these people who are low on oxygen have to carry their portable oxygen concentrator, which is, you know, it's paradoxical and very unfortunate. So we are about to prototype a cart. Think of it as like a roll-along luggage with swivel wheels, but it's designed for you to put in your oxygen concentrator with the biggest battery pack. You can go out, you know, go on an outing for 4 to 6 hours. And all you have to do is just push this along. And it comes with a special braking system. If your gait is not too good, you feel like you're gonna fall, you just touch the handle and it stops and prevent you from having a fall, because hip fracture is a big cause of death in elderly patients. So yes, we are working on this solution, Rick, but a quick answer, yes, the mask will help, and we have something that will help them even more.
I'm going to make sure I have your contact information before I sign off. But if not, I'll get back with you because I've got to jump off the meeting for at 11 o'clock.
Sure.
Thank you. That's
we are connected
ELIN.
on LinkedIn, so you have my info.
It's ELIN at helomedical.com.
okay. Yeah, we've been in touch.
Okay.
Let me just ask the room, are there other questions? Oh, there's Maren, you have your hand raised.
I did raise my hand. The information you shared, Eddie, was really, really great to hear, sort of. Now I'm more scared of COVID than ever. But I had a question about the company, because I was looking up the Helo Medical website, and you have a couple other products listed as well. I see that the Oasis, which is a wound care system, has not yet received clearance. So I assume you're not selling that in the US?
Correct. COVID halted our R&D efforts there. And
okay.
Pivoted to respiratory, but we are absolutely going back to it because that is a breakthrough technology platform.
Okay, so it seems to me that the marketing plan for both of the products, both the wound care and the mask, might be very similar in terms of what groups you're going to try to get to sell this in the hospital. So what are you going to have, a direct sales force? Are you going to be going through distributors? What's your plan for actually selling this product?
We can't afford a direct sales force. We are a startup that's been bootstrapping for forever. I haven't received a penny of salary for decades, should we say that? So, but the SentriO Oxy is our first product that's available. We anticipate that it will be welcomed by the, it will be welcomed in the marketplace because of what it can do. And following right on the tail of that is our Maxo nasal cannula. And then, so with the funding that we get from that, we're going to return as soon as possible to finishing our Oasis wound care system, which will deliver so many advanced therapies never before possible, and literally provide 8 extra hours of beneficial therapy without reducing 1 minute of the baseline therapy. It was truly a eureka moment when I discovered that, and we have a portfolio of issued patents now that protect our therapeutic platform.
So I see there's a lot of technical work that's been done. What I would like to get a feeling of, so as an investor, if I'm looking at a medical product, one of the things that I ask is about the company infrastructure, just in terms of, what are you setting up with suppliers? What type of information are you documenting in the system? Even if you're talking, you're a class 1, but you're still expected to have all the information about efficacy and, clinical support and risk management and all of that that's been documented in the company. You would still need to have, reporting capabilities. You'd still need to have ways for people to enter complaints. So where are you at in terms of the company maturity with that type of infrastructure, which also costs money?
We have QMS system in place. When we design our product, we have we go through the risk analysis and document our thinking process, what we do to reduce the risk and so on. Chances are, if somebody were to go over it with a magnifying lens, they will find some imperfections here and there. And we are very acutely aware of the importance of being meticulous in FDA compliance, risk management. And we do, it is very, very high on our priority list. So we are not saying, no, it's probably all right. It's only,
what Maren was specifically asking about was your post-market quality management system in terms of complaints procedure and reporting procedure.
That was part of it. And the other part that I'd be really interested in is, I assume that you're having this manufactured by third party, the supplier controls that you've got in place and what your company is doing for confirming the product. That might be too long a question for this group. So Joe, cut me off if you want, but I think those are 2 areas that I often see companies not paying attention to.
Well, the partners we're working with have ISO 13485 certification. We were careful to find people competent to make quality products for us. And
so that is good, but it may not be sufficient.
Okay. Well, we certainly welcome your guidance, Maren. Thank you.
Paul, I know you focus on high worth electronic types of supply chain issues, but Eddie mentioned supply a couple times in his conversation. Anything leap to mind?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I've already reached out to Eddie on Slack. I'd love to have a deeper conversation, Eddie, with you about the entire supply chain, and maybe before you go too further down the road, just brainstorm with you on how you could drop the cost of manufacturing, make the product more available closer to your clients, because we do product assembly. We're an FDA registered company, as well as warehousing, as well as distribution, returns management, and things like that. It's a huge, complex process that a business requires. And if you need help with that, I'd love to just help you think through that process if you're open to that.
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate it. I need a lot of help.
Actually,
by the way, congratulations.
You can tell
I
just
love
by
what you
looking
do.
at me.
No. Congratulations.
point,
it's amazing.
To the point of you needing help, I'd like Sue to come off mute, because She presented a few weeks back, and from building her management team and getting multiple awards and attention and orders in advance. Is there anything you heard today that you'd say, Eddie, you might want to keep in mind, something that has gotten you on your trajectory towards commercialization?
You have a great invention, by the way, Sue. I'm very
Thank you.
impressed. Congratulations.
I applaud you on everything that you're doing. And did you know that 80% of all anesthesiologists do not filter? Just a fact. And Duramorph always comes in a glass ampule, so that's kind of scary. And I will get back to Michelle and Joe about Europe, because I know I need to talk to you. I've just been slammed trying to get a grant in. I think quality control is really important, and then you have to figure out who your customer is and how you're going to sell. We're lucky enough right now, maybe it's luck, maybe it's not, that that we're working with a strategic partner, that so all we have to do is build it and ship it, and they'll take care of that. I myself will have to have a quality control system in place. Michelle's going to help me with that once I bring her on. You don't know that yet, Michelle, but I'm bringing you on.
I love that.
And we did submit a pre-FDA packet, and we'll go over that and for FDA, and we anticipate submission early January or maybe late January. We're starting the molding and all that. So be careful, get your patents, and just be mindful of other companies out there and who your competition is. Know your numbers, which you do know most of your numbers, but make it also simple that other people can understand what you're saying.
I also thought about, thank you, Sue. I also thought about strategic partnerships. I don't think you've had the bandwidth to explore them. I wonder if you might enlist the help of someone like Daniel Shepard, who does that for a living, so that basically your competitors might want to buy your technology, and then you can give yourself a paycheck for the first time in decades. Alyssa?
I was thinking about transportation and just things that would be compatible on that note. An LVAD would be if it could plug into the battery pack of an LVAD, or if it could function with an LVAD. One of the biggest issues that LVAD patients have is respiratory issues. And so particularly when they get into a scare. So, and then also making it to be portable with the wheelchair or walker versus a backpack, because a lot of people with mobility issues or respiratory issues, they can't get out and exercise, so they don't have the muscle function.
Thank you. I wasn't aware that there are patients wanting to get out on LVAD assist devices, but this will just take the weight right off their shoulders, because some of you are probably not old enough to know this, but you remember the days of luggage before wheels. We had to carry all the way up to the check-in desk, and heaven forbid we have to drag it even further. But today, with the swivel wheel luggage revolution, you can pack, 25 pounds, 30 pounds, and it's effortless, just push along. So basically, that's what this device. Oh, and the top allows you to sit down when you're tired. It will break even on the slope, and so you could carry a 25 kilo weight, and it would be very little work. So truly cutting the tether from the home, allowing them to a new quality of life.
David?
Yeah, hey, Eddie, this is David. Fascinating product. I know we're getting late on time here, but do you have an IFU you could share and to take a look at? Because I'm interested in, I'm just fascinated with it, and just out of curiosity, and was wanting to look at that indication statement carefully and see and compare what's available out there.
The indication statement is very broad. It just says for improving oxygenation.
Yeah. Yeah.
It says for improving oxygen saturation, I think.
So, your indications can be both stated like broadly, like you said, in an IFU, but they also include claims and implied claims. Mm-hmm. So David, just be mindful of, I know you know those things, but.
Yeah, that's why I said I wanted the IFU to take a look at it.
My point, point at the beginning.
Okay, cool. Well, I think we're like-minded in that piece, but I'm more curious than anything else, but I'm fascinated and curious, but I'd like to see the IFU. Yeah.
Sure. I'm happy to share it. And I am acutely aware of my limitations, believe me.
Yeah.
So any advice or guidance is greatly welcome. And
Yeah.
by the way, I take criticism.
Well, no,
Really. No, and I don't really, I mean, 99.9% of the time, I don't view it as criticism.
Yeah.
Even in my freshman year in college, I told myself, if somebody says something to me that's only 25% true, you know, they say, hey, whatever, I have gained 25%. Forget about the 75% that's not true. So it made me very receptive.
Yeah. I think it's fascinating. I'm just going to get back. I'd like to look at it and provide just a little brief insight, basically, not to say it's criticism or anything, but.
Thank you, David. Alyssa, you had something else to add? No?
No, my hand, I just lowering my hand.
Well, Marin's raised her hand again, and I was just about to mention her that in 3 weeks' time, she's going to talk to us about why your QMS system is inadequate. And that wasn't directed to you specifically, Eddie, but
it was
does
not.
seem like
I got the hint.
21 days from now, she will answer that question. It'll be completely free to you. So
Yeah. So David, I was just going to suggest you also look at the Hilo medical website, because there's actually some things that look much more specific claims on the website.
Yeah. Okay, good. That's great. Thank you for that. That's good.
I'm hearing a consensus of things there. So
By the way, remember, I just want to say that I was so impressed with your invention as well. It's brilliant. Make no bones about it. I think you'll be a great success.
that was for Alyssa?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, thank you, Eddie. I appreciate it. And I want to introduce you to somebody at WashU. And he's the head of innovation for anesthesiology.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Anything else from the crowd? This was one of those, validating, this is why we do this kind of conversation. So I love that you guys are here every week and you freely contribute. And I mentioned today on Slack to the general interest group that there are, in some way we're kind of an accelerator, but I'm just not backed the way others are, and efforts for me to kind of do it on my own have not, of course, they've not been fruitful. It requires a real team and money and effort and focus that I alone cannot do. Is that you waving goodbye? Goodbye. I can't hit that note. I'll just say goodbye.
Yeah, Joe, Joe, just if you don't mind, what you're doing here is just amazing. The way we come together and collaborate.
Yes.
And really accelerate. We move ideas forward, right?
No, it makes me very happy. These meetings make me very happy, but it's not scaled. It's not being used at a level that.
If you want to have a conversation with me on that, I'd love to help you scale it.
Anytime I can get to Sousa time. Why would I say no?
See, I wrote a book on that. Just
okay,
kidding.
Yes, send us all quick copies, and I would like mine to be autographed to my best friend, Joe Hage.
Yes, absolutely. I love you. All right, guys.
So next week, Michael's on deck for a dashboard that we can use. The following week, Gary Sainer from Reed Tech will talk to us about UDI in Europe. And then Mari will tell us why we are inadequate. So for Joe Hage and Joe Hage Enterprises, this has been Joe Hage. Thank you for joining us today. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Thanks, Joe.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.